The Texas thunderstorm raged across the prairie with biblical fury. Lightning split the night sky while rain fell in sheets that turned the dusty ground into rivers of mud. It was August 1897, and rancher Marcus Sullivan was preparing for bed when he heard the sound that would change his life forever. 3 desperate knocks echoed through the storm. Mac grabbed his lantern and rifle, then made his way to the front door of his ranch house. Living alone 30 miles from the nearest town had taught him to be cautious about unexpected visitors, especially during violent weather. "Who is there?" Mac called out over the roar of thunder and rain. "Please help us, mister," came a young voice barely audible above the storm. "We are just boys, and we need somewhere safe to stay." Mac opened the door and found a sight that broke his heart. 5 boys stood on his porch, soaked to the bone and shivering in the cold rain. They ranged in age from perhaps 7 to 14 years old. Their clothes were torn and muddy, and they looked like they had been traveling for days. "Good Lord, boys," Mac said, immediately stepping aside. "Get inside before you catch pneumonia." The boys filed into Mac's warm kitchen, their wet shoes squishing on the wooden floor. In the lamplight, Mac could see they were all thin and showed signs of recent hardship. Most concerning of all, they looked terrified, as if they were running from something dangerous. "What are your names, boys?" Mac asked as he began gathering towels and blankets. "And what are you doing out in weather like this?" The oldest boy spoke for the group. "I am Thomas Baker, and I am 13 years old. This is William Chen, he is 12. That is Miguel Santos, he is 10. The smaller boy is James Murphy, he is 8, and the little one is Peter Walsh, he is 7. Mac studied their young faces, seeing exhaustion and fear mixed with desperate hope. "Thomas, where did you boys come from?" "The nearest town is Eagle Pass, and that is a full day's ride from here." Thomas glanced at his companions before answering. "We escaped from the Riverside Boys Academy 3 days ago, mister. We have been walking ever since, trying to find someone who might help us." Mac felt a chill despite the warm room. Riverside Boys Academy was supposed to be one of the finest institutions in Texas. It was funded by wealthy donors and had a reputation for providing education and care for orphaned boys throughout the territory. "Thomas, why did you need to escape from the academy? Were they not treating you well?" Thomas's young face showed pain that went far beyond physical discomfort. "They were hurting us real bad, mister. But that is not the worst part. We found out something terrible about what they are really doing to boys at the academy. Something that nobody knows about." The other boys nodded solemnly. William stepped forward. "We tried to tell people in Eagle Pass about what was happening, but nobody would believe us. They said we were just troublemaking orphans making up stories." Mac served the boys hot soup and bread while they warmed themselves by his fireplace. As they ate, he studied their behavior. These children showed signs of systematic abuse, and their fear seemed genuine and deep-rooted. "Thomas, what did you discover at the academy?" Mac asked gently. Thomas reached inside his wet shirt and pulled out a folded paper that he had obviously protected carefully during their journey. "We found this hidden in the headmaster's office. It proves that the academy is not what people think it is." Mac accepted the damp paper and unfolded it carefully. What he saw made his hands tremble with rage. It appeared to be a contract between the academy and a mining company discussing the rental of workers for dangerous underground operations. The document listed boys by age and physical condition, with monthly rental fees ranging from $20 to $50 per child. The contract specified that the boys would work 12-hour shifts and that the mining company was not responsible for injuries or deaths that occurred during their employment. "Boys," Mac said, looking up from the horrifying document, "how did you get this contract?" Miguel answered this time. "James here can move real quiet, and he is good at getting into places without being seen. We heard Headmaster Morrison talking about sending a group of older boys to work in the copper mines. We knew that boys who went to work never came back. James spoke up in a small voice. I snuck into the headmaster's office while he was at dinner. There were lots of papers like that one showing different places where they send boys to work. None of them ever come home. Mac studied the contract more carefully, noting the official seals and signatures. This was not some casual arrangement, but a formal business relationship between the academy and various companies that needed cheap labor. Peter, the youngest boy, climbed onto Mac's lap seeking comfort. Are the bad men going to find us? Here, mister, we do not want to go back to that place. Mac wrapped his arms protectively round the frightened child. Nobody is going to hurt you boys while you're under my roof. But I need to understand exactly what has been happening at the academy. Thomas pulled out another paper that had been hidden in his shoe. This shows all the boys who have been sent away to work in the past years. 23 boys, and none of them ever came back or sent letters like Headmaster Morrison said they would. Mac examined the list, seeing names, ages, and destinations. Had painted a picture of systematic exploitation. Boys as young as 10 were being sent to work in conditions that would challenge grown men. William added more details. The headmaster told everyone that the boys were being apprenticed to learn trades. He said they would come back as skilled workers who could support themselves, but we found out they were really being sold as slave laborers. Mac felt anger building in his chest. The same fury he had experienced during his years as a cavalry officer when he encountered injustice and cruelty, but this was worse because it involved the systematic abuse of children who had no one to protect them. Boys, Mac said, his voice firm with resolve, these documents are enough evidence to destroy the people running Riverside Academy, but exposing this conspiracy will be dangerous. These men have obviously killed to keep their secrets. Thomas straightened his thin shoulders, showing courage that impressed Mac. Mr. Sullivan, we did not walk 50 miles through rain and mud just to give up when things get scary. There are still 40 boys at the academy who do not know what is really going to happen to them. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible Western stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Mac looked at the 5 brave boys who had risked everything to expose unspeakable evil. Their courage and determination reminded him of soldiers he had known who were willing to die for their principle. It's not, boys, he said, your bravery in gathering this evidence puts most adults to shame. We are going to use these documents to save every child still trapped at that academy and bring justice to the men who have been exploiting them. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe now to follow this epic Western adventure and discover how 5 orphan boys and a determined rancher plan to expose the biggest child exploitation scandal in Texas history. The storm outside was beginning to weaken, but Mac knew the real tempest was just beginning. 5 courageous children had trusted him with evidence that could topple a criminal empire. Now it was time to prove that their faith had not been misplaced. Mac spent the early morning hours examining every document the boys had brought while they slept peacefully for the first time in days. What he discovered made his veteran heart sick with rage. The scope of the criminal operation at Riverside Boys Academy was far worse than he had initially imagined. The papers revealed that Headmaster Morrison and his staff had been operating the academy as a front for child trafficking for at least 3 years. The institution that was supposed to educate and care for orphaned boys was actually a pipeline that supplied unpaid laborers to businesses throughout Texas and neighboring territories. According to the documents, boys at the academy were evaluated, not for their educational potential but for their physical strength and ability to perform dangerous work. Those deemed suitable were then rented out to mining companies, railroad construction crews, and cattle ranches that needed workers who could not complain about conditions or wages. The financial records showed that the academy collected substantial fees for these rentals while spending almost nothing on the actual care and education of the children. Money that donors believed was providing food, clothing, and schooling was instead being pocketed by Morrison and his accomplices. Thomas woke up first and found Mac reading by lamplight. "Did you see everything we wrote down about the other boys, Mr. Sullivan?" Mac looked up from the damning evidence. "Thomas, you boys have uncovered a criminal conspiracy that reaches far beyond Riverside Academy. These documents show connections to similar operations in at least 4 other states." The other boys gradually woke up and joined their conversation. William spoke first. "Tell him about the train, Mr. Sullivan. The papers mention boys being shipped to faraway places." Mac turned to a section that detailed transportation arrangements for moving children between different facilities. The academy was apparently part of a network that could relocate boys quickly when local. Authorities began asking questions. Miguel pointed to one of the documents. "That paper shows boys being sent to work in silver mines in Colorado. The contract says the mining company does not have to pay for medical care if the boys get hurt or sick." The implications were staggering. Children were being treated as disposable property with no legal protections or rights. When they became too injured or sick to work, they were simply abandoned or worse. James spoke up in his quiet voice. "We heard Headmaster Morrison talking to some men about boys who caused trouble. He said they had ways of making sure problem children never caused problems again." Mac felt his blood turn cold. The casual way Morrison discussed disposing of children suggested that murder was simply another business expense in his operation. Peter climbed back onto Mac's lap, seeking comfort. The little boy had obviously been traumatized by his experiences at the academy. "Are you really going to stop the bad men, Mr. Sullivan? Can you save the other boys?" Mac wrapped his arms round the frightened child. "Peter, we are going to expose this whole operation and make sure every boy still at the academy gets free. But first we need to get this evidence to someone with the authority to shut down Morrison and his network." Thomas looked worried. "Who can we trust, Mr. Sullivan? The papers show that Sheriff Davis at Eagle Pass gets money from the academy. Maybe other lawmen are working with them too." Mac had been considering their options carefully. "There is a federal judge named Sarah Crawford who operates out of Austin. She has jurisdiction over interstate crimes and a reputation for absolute integrity. More importantly, she specializes in cases involving exploitation of children." William's eyes brightened with hope. "How far is Austin? Can we get there before they hurt more boys?" Mac studied his map of Texas. "About 200 miles through country that will be dangerous to travel. Morrison will have men looking for you boys, and they will do anything to get those documents back." The sound of approaching horses interrupted their planning. Mac immediately moved to his window and counted 6 riders heading toward his ranch through the morning mist. He recognized several men from Eagle Pass, including Deputy Carter, who worked closely with Sheriff Davis. "Boys, we have company," Mac said urgently. "I can see Deputy Carter and 5 other men. They are probably here looking for you." The 5 boys immediately demonstrated survival skills they had learned through necessity. Thomas helped Peter hide in a storage closet while William and Miguel concealed themselves under loose floorboards. James used his small size to squeeze behind the kitchen stove. Mac waited until the riders reached his porch before opening the door. Deputy Carter stood there with 5 armed men, all displaying the authority of official law. "Enforcement. Mr. Sullivan," Carter said with false politeness, "we are looking for 5 runaway boys from Riverside Academy. Their teachers are worried about them, and we have reason to believe they might have come this direction." Mac met Carter's gaze steadily. "I have not seen any children, Deputy. This storm last night would have been dangerous for anyone caught out in it." Carter stepped inside without invitation, his eyes scanning the room for signs of the fugitives. These boys are more than just runaways, Sullivan. They have been spreading lies about the academy, and they may have stolen important documents. What kind of documents? Mac asked, keeping his voice neutral. Carter's expression hardened. Private papers belonging to Headmaster Morrison, educational records that were taken from a locked office. If you see these boys, you need to contact us immediately. Mac wondered how many other people Carter had lied to in order to protect Morrison's criminal operation. I will keep that in mind, Deputy. Don't miss the next chapter of this epic Western adventure. Subscribe to our channel to follow this dangerous mission and discover whether Mac and the boys can reach us. 10 before Morrison's men capture the man, destroy the evidence. After Carter and his men left, Mac helped the boys out of their hiding places. Their faces showed fear, but also determination that impressed the veteran rancher. Boys, Mac said, gathering supplies and checking his weapons, we cannot stay here any longer. Carter will be back with more men, and they will search more thoroughly. Next time, we leave for Austin within the hour. Thomas looked at his companions, then back at Mac. We are ready, Mr. Sullivan. Those 40 boys still at the academy are counting on us to get this evidence to someone who can save them. Mac felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Then we better not disappoint them. We have a long, dangerous journey ahead. But justice is waiting at the end of it. The Texas sun was climbing higher, but Mac knew they were racing against more than just time. Morrison's network had money, power, and the willingness to kill to protect their secrets. Getting 5 brave boys and crucial evidence to Austin alive would require all of Mac's military experience and frontier skills. The Texas heat was already brutal as Mac and the 5 boys left his ranch heading south toward Austin. Mac had chosen a route through remote hill country that would keep them away from main roads where Morrison's men might be waiting. The journey would take at least 4 days through some of the harshest terrain in Texas. The boys proved to be tougher travelers than Mac had expected. Thomas took charge of organizing their limited supplies, while William used his knowledge of the countryside to find water sources. Miguel and James worked together to scout ahead for potential dangers, while Peter stayed close to Mac for protection. On the second day, they encountered their first serious obstacle. William, who had been checking their back trail, returned with disturbing news. There are at least 8 riders following us, Mr. Sullivan. They are about 2 hours behind and closing the distance. Mac studied the pursuing riders through his field glasses. He recognized several men from Eagle Pass, including some who worked directly for Headmaster Morrison. They were armed and riding hard with the determination of people who would stop at nothing to recover the stolen documents. We need to reach Limestone Creek before they catch us, Mac decided. There is a canyon there with good defensive positions and multiple escape routes. The race that followed tested everyone's endurance. Mac's horses were strong, but their pursuers were riding fresh mounts and clearly knew the country well. The gap between the 2 groups was slowly closing as they rode across the open prairie. Thomas rode beside Mac as they approached the canyon. What happens if they corner us, Mr. Sullivan? Will you be able to fight all of them? Mac checked his weapons and ammunition. Son, I have been in tighter spots than this. But our job is not to fight them. Our job is to get you boys and that evidence to Judge Crawford alive. The canyon provided the defensive position Mac had hoped for. He positioned the boys in a sheltered area behind large rocks, while he took up a position that would allow him to cover their escape route. The confrontation came when Deputy Carter and 7 armed men entered the canyon expecting to corner their quarry. Instead, they found themselves facing an experienced soldier who had chosen his battlefield carefully. Sullivan, Carter called out, "Send out those boys and the papers they stole. Nobody has to get hurt here." Mac's response was a rifle shot that sent Carter diving for cover. The message was clear. There would be no negotiation and no surrender. The gunfight that followed was brief but decisive. Mac's superior position and marksmanship gave him a significant advantage over men who were more accustomed to intimidating unarmed children than fighting experienced soldiers. When the shooting stopped, 3 of Morrison's men were wounded and the others were retreating back toward Eagle Pass. Carter himself was pinned behind inadequate cover, clearly reconsidering his chances of success. The rest of the journey passed without major incident, though Mac remained vigilant for additional pursuit. The boys showed remarkable resilience despite the dangers they had faced. Their determination to save their friends at the academy kept them focused on the mission ahead. On the morning of the 4th day, they saw Austin spread out before them. Like a promise of civilization and justice, the state capital represented safety and the rule of law that would finally hold Morrison and his network accountable for their crimes. Judge Sarah Crawford proved to be everything Mac had hoped. She was a woman of perhaps 45 years with sharp, intelligent eyes, and the bearing of someone who had spent her career fighting injustice. When Mac presented the documents and explained their situation, she listened with growing anger. This evidence shows systematic exploitation of children on a scale I have never seen, Judge Crawford said after examining the damning papers. Mr. Sullivan, these boys have uncovered one of the largest criminal conspiracies in Texas history. Thomas stepped forward, speaking for all of them. Judge Crawford, there are still 40 boys at Riverside Academy who do not know what is really going to happen to them. Can you save them before the bad men hurt them? Crawford's expression hardened with determination. Son, we are going to save every child mentioned in these documents. More than that, we are going to destroy this entire network and make sure nothing like this ever happens again. The federal operation that followed was swift and comprehensive. Judge Crawford coordinated with honest lawmen throughout Texas and neighboring states to conduct simultaneous raids on all facilities connected to Morrison's network. Headmaster Morrison was arrested along with 15 accomplices who had been exploiting children. For years, the trials that followed exposed corruption that led to major reforms in institutional oversight and child protection laws throughout the American Southwest. Most importantly, the 40 boys still at Riverside Academy were rescued and either reunited with surviving family members or placed with carefully screened families who genuinely wanted to provide loving homes. Subscribe now to our channel for more epic Western stories that celebrate the triumph of good over evil. Thomas, William, Miguel, James, and Peter were adopted by Mac Sullivan, who discovered that raising 5 remarkable boys gave new purpose to his ranch life. His home became a refuge where other rescued children could visit and heal from their traumatic experiences. The documents that had started their adventure were preserved in state archives as evidence of how children's courage could expose adult corruption. The boys' willingness to risk everything for their friends proved that heroes come in all ages. Riverside Boys Academy was permanently closed, and its buildings were converted into a legitimate school. It actually provided education and care for orphaned children. The new institution was carefully monitored to ensure that the horrors of the past would never be repeated. Mac Sullivan never regretted taking in 5 soaked orphan boys who appeared at his gate during a thunderstorm. Instead, he found that his greatest achievement was not his military service, but the family he gained by standing up for children who had nowhere else to turn. This Western story reminds us that sometimes the most important visitors arrive at our door when we least expect them, and that true heroism often requires ordinary people to do extraordinary things to protect the innocent.